Hi everybody, this is a quick Unity video to get you started. So first of all, go to unity3d.com to grab yourself a copy of the software. I personally recommend that you get the student edition because it comes with additional features that will help you collaborate with other team members. There are other tools that you might like to download while you're at it. One of them is Maya, which is a 3D modeling package, which is generally free for university students. Another package is blender.org, which is also a 3D modeling package, also free. And then lastly, if you're a Mac user, there's also cheetah3d.com, which is pretty good for modeling for Unity. Cheetah, unfortunately, is not free. So in a nutshell, Unity, to make things happen, you would have to do coding in C#, which is a programming language very similar to Java. There used to be ways of programming via a JavaScript type interface, but that's basically gone now. A couple of things to pay attention to, which some of the tutorial videos will not explain, are some of these little bits of foundational stuff that might help you see the same kind of repeating patterns in the videos that you watch online. One of the things is assets. Basically, any three-dimensional model, any sound, any texture, in other words, a picture that you apply to a model is called an asset. You can either make your own assets using music programs or sound programs or 3D modeling packages, and then you can bring them into Unity, or you can go to the Unity Asset Store to download free assets, and sometimes you can get also paid assets. Prefabs are basically a bundling of these assets, which if you find that there are certain assets are using over and over again, which have certain capabilities built into them, it's nice to bundle them as prefab so you can simply drag and drop it into your Unity application to get stuff done much more quickly. Now, apart from assets, a game object is when you actually take an asset and put it into your scene, the scene in which your game is going to revolve around. When your assets or prefabs are dragged into the Unity for use, that's when they become what's called a game object. Now, each game object can have 0 or more components. Components are what really give all the cool features that you'd like to implement for these assets. So what I mean by that is a component is what you use to, for example, move an object in 3D space, in X, Y, Z, as well as rotate it or scale it. Typically, these are called transformations in Unity. There are also much more complicated or complex components, like, for example, components that let you do physics, or shaders, or scripts. Scripts is where you start writing C# code so that you can produce complicated behavior for your game objects. And as I mentioned before, the game objects that you use or work with have to be dragged into a Unity scene, and that's sort of the arena in which everything happens. So let's look a little bit at scripts a little bit more. Scripts can control just about everything in the game, right? Most of the work is done in scripts. Now, you're probably thinking, gee, I'm not a coder, what do I do? Well, don't worry about that. In another video, I'm going to talk about visual scripting, where you can basically do almost exactly what you can do with scripts, but by using a visual interface. So first of all, scripts are actually also components of a game object, right? A game object can have many scripts, all attached to them at the same time, doing a variety of different things. And as I mentioned before, C#, the programming language, is primarily what you use. I typically recommend that if you're going to code in C# for Unity, you should use Visual Studio Code. You can download a copy of this at code.visualstudio.com. Now, a couple of things you should keep in mind about scripts. Scripts have primarily two methods. Essentially, these are two functions. One is start and one is update. Okay. Start basically means that anything you'd want to do to your game object at the start of the, when the game object exists, that's where you put all the code for that game object. And then as the game object is running, at every single update of the game object, that's where you put all the code that you need to update the state of the game object. So for example, if your game object is moving across the screen, in your update code is where you put in code to actually do the movement of the object. Now, scripts have a whole bunch of other methods, which I won't explain in this video, but they basically respond to a bunch of Unity events that get triggered whenever certain things happen. So one of the events could be, for example, a collision. When two objects collide with each other, you want to be alerted that collision happened so that you can do something in response to that collision. Now, as I mentioned before, scripting has been primarily for a long time been through using C#. But Unity, in probably the last 5 years, has introduced visual scripting. The previous name for visual scripting was called Bolt. And within Bolt, you basically create these flow graphs as a way to describe almost exactly what you would do in a script, step by step, but through pictures, not through typing a whole bunch of text. So let's go through a really quick workflow of how all this stuff works. How do assets and game objects and components, what do you do with them? Or how do you control them? Or what's basically the order in which you do stuff? You do stuff in Unity. So first of all, you always create your asset, or you get some assets, like from the asset store. So assets can, like I said, can be created using tools like Maya or Blender for 3D models. Also, you can use tools like Audacity to make sound effects of your own. Or, of course, you can download sound effect files from the internet. The next thing you have to do is add the asset to your project panel by dragging the files from your desktop into the project panel. And then you add the assets to the scene to make a game object appear by dragging the assets to the actual scene window itself. Or alternatively, you can make an empty game object. And so within these game objects, you can start to add components to enrich them. So you can add physics or rigid body dynamics to make the object bounce under physics. And you can also add a script, of course. And if a component is a script, you edit it to add richer behavior. Or alternatively, if you're using visual scripting, then you're creating what are called flow graphs. And so this sequence of steps, you keep repeating over and over and until your game or virtual reality application is complete. Okay, so all this sounds pretty abstract. So I'm going to show you this sequence of events in a video. Okay, hold on to your hats. But first of all, before we get to each of these steps, let me show you what the user interface for Unity looks like. So after you've logged in to Unity's Unity Hub and created yourself a project, I'll show you that in a moment too. This is what Unity will launch into. This is the main user interface. A couple of things to note. To gain access to assets, game objects, and components, use the menu at the top of the screen. If you want to manipulate any of the objects in the scene, like this red cube, these are the manipulation controllers, right? You can move something, rotate something, scale something, and so forth. To actually play your simulation, your game, these are the play, pause, and stop controls. This part of the panel, this panel right here, is called the scene hierarchy. It basically is a list of things that are in the actual game scene that you see here. Okay, in this particular case, this cube, this red cube, has a whole bunch of different components. So this panel here is called the inspector, and the inspector is the panel in which you use to work with all the components that are part of this cube. So for example, one component is a new material component, which you use to color the cube. As I mentioned before, you can move objects around. Well, you see this component right here, transform. Transform lets you position an object, rotate it, scale it. And then lastly, this panel down here is the project panel, where you can actually see all the assets that you have loaded as part of this project. Now, one important little tab that you should pay attention to is this console tab. When you click on it, it reveals a console, basically a bunch of text, which gives you status information about how your program is running, or if you're trying to make the program compile. In other words, if you're trying to get your script to work, any errors that show up will appear in this console panel when you click on it. Right? All the text will appear in this space. Okay, so let's look at a very simple demo using this user interface. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a very simple demo involving a cube that's spinning on one of its axes. These are the steps. Now, you don't have to remember them, because the next part of this video, we're going to actually walk you through each of these one by one. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the game object menu and make a cube. Then we're going to go to the asset menu and create a little C# script. I'm going to call it spinner. And then we're going to click on the cube and then drag the spinner script to the cube inspector. And then we're going to open the spinner script and then put some text into the text editor. We're going to put some of the actual script itself into the text editor. Okay, here we go. Let's watch this video now. First of all, let's create ourselves a new project. So go up to the new project button, make sure it's 3D, make sure you're using a pretty new version of Unity, in this case 2021. Type in a project name of some kind, like class, script, spinner. Make sure it's stored where you like for the script to be stored. Create the project. We wait a bit. We wait some more. Okay, and so if everything worked well, Unity will have opened this window. So now let's make a cube. Game object, 3D object, and cube. Ta-da! There's your cube. Let's zoom in, take a look at it. If I click on it, now let's go make a script. Go to Assets, Create, and then C# script right there. So let's go type in the name of the script. Call it spinner. And let's drag, hold on a second. If you click, you'll see the script there. You can also open it to take a look what's inside. And it should open up an editor somewhat like this. You can ignore the message here. And right there is the script itself. So here's the script. And we're going to start typing stuff in. So first of all, we're going to make a little variable called speed. It's a public variable of type float. Set the speed to 1. And then in the update function, we're going to add a line of code to control the speed of rotation. So game object transform rotate x, y, z. Speed 0, 0. So this will spin only along the x-axis. So let's save the script. Go back to Unity. Okay, all good. Click on the object. Now we got to give the script to the object. So we're going to click and drag that script into the object's inspector, and lo and behold, there it is. Now if you run the program, this is what it looks like. Look, ta-da, the cube is spinning. Now, while it's running, you can also change the speed. So you can make it 0.1, for example, and notice it slows down. 0.2 speeds up a little bit. 0.9. And that's it.